Well, I just think
taking a step back. Why would he make that up?
Okay, so but what do you consider a step back? Like if Nola's a free agent and they sign him to a 6-year deal, is that taking a step back? Or is that signing and got go? Oh, we're thinking about 25, 26. We signed him a long-term deal instead of these little 2-year deals for nothing. Hold it,
we will
we got
see in the winter.
We will see. Brittany Ghiroli from The Athletic joining us right now to get into all of this, and we'll start right there too. Britt, great to see you. Happy trade deadline day. About an hour, 20 minutes away from destroying the Orioles. But first, I want to start with Max. So what do you think of the Scherzer trade and these comments that we're seeing? And obviously also just mixing in the Mets plans and sudden pivot.
Yeah. So I was listening to what you were saying off the air, Scott. And to me, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I mean, yes, you'd want Max off the books, but trading Justin Verlander to me signals that this isn't like a retooling, which is what Billy Epler told the media the other day. This is kind of a rebuild, especially if they're listening on guys like Pete Alonso. And, I know there's a lot going on with Pete Alonso right now because he's another guy that at least is gauging interest on the trade market. I think it would take a big haul for the Mets to be willing to move him. But let's think about it. They already moved Mark Canha. They already moved Max Scherzer. They already moved Justin Verlander. We know they're going to move Tommy Pham in the next, hour, 20 minutes here as we sit here. So if this is not a rebuild, or at least a mini rebuild, what is it, right? And I think Scherzer's comments made it pretty clear, and I'm guessing that's what they said to Justin Verlander too. Like, hey, we're not going to be good next year, or we're not going to go all in next year. And so Verlander said, all right, then I'll go to Houston. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to get these two guys who committed to the Mets, who committed to winning a championship with the Mets. They wouldn't have gotten either one of these guys to change their plans if that wasn't in fact the case for next year.
Do you think they lied? Scott was insinuating that they lied to get this thing done, and women are the best ones to figure out who's lying and who's not. Us guys, we're not good at figuring out who's liars. We just think everybody's a liar. Like I think Todd's lying right now, and he's not even saying anything.
I mean, look, there's lots of lies going on. I don't even want to think about how many people probably lied to me today alone, the trade deadline, in terms of rumors and what's happening. But I do think that Max says in this great article by Ken Rosenthal that not only did he talk to Billy Epler, who could have lied, but he talked to Steve Cohen. So you're saying that both of these guys are now lying about the future direction of the organization, and they turn around and sell more players that are signed after this year. So it doesn't really make sense. If they were going to lie and only move Max, yeah, maybe. But to then move Justin Verlander, if you're going to be good next year, what's the point of moving Justin Verlander? I don't understand.
Well, I just want to make sure you know, we are not lying to you here, okay? This is a safe place. Me, Todd, Scott Braun.
Although I will say this, okay, and this is not a lie. I would say this is almost a guarantee. Billy Epler will not be leading the front office for the Mets next year. I'm not even saying that he's necessarily being let go, but he will not be at the top of the front office. He will not be the decision maker. There will be someone above him. And whether they let him go or say, hey, would you like to work for someone? I promise you he will not be leading the front office by the wintertime.
Agreed.
But anyway.
Yeah, I would agree. David Stearns, are you listening?
Yes. Bob Nightingale yesterday came on our show and basically guaranteed that David Stearns was going to be running the team. And he actually did think that they were going to basically scrap it all down and then start over again, which I disagree with. I don't think you can sell that so quickly where you're like, we're here, we're going to be competitive every year, screw the Wilpons. Finally, Mets fans are going to get treated well. I don't think they're going to reverse course like that. Like for me, for example, so in the offseason, let's say they sign Aaron Nola, right? We're just using him as a good example here. So a good free agent pitcher who's much younger than Verlander and Scherzer. If they sign him to a 5 or 6 year deal, do Max or JV think that they screwed him? Or if I'm the Mets, I go, yeah, that's thinking about 25 and 26. We signed a guy for 6 years who's way younger than you guys.
Yeah, I mean, they could do that. The X factor here is Ohtani. How are they going to do this at the deadline and then say to Shohei Ohtani, hey, we're going to win. Come pick us, choose us, right? I think that this kind of shoots them in the foot to some extent over Ohtani because he wants to go somewhere where he knows he's going to win. And you can't really sell him on an organization that is kind of in the middle of something. Even if they get David Stearns, like you said, and I agree with Bob, I think if David Stearns comes, you're going to see a more slow, painful process than people wanted. But if they're really going to emulate the Dodgers, at least from a prospect perspective, then they have to kind of take a little bit of a slower route. So I still think they're not going to be the Orioles next year, the Orioles of 2 or 3 years ago, right? They're not going to be the Kansas City Royals. They're going to be a mostly competitive team, but with where they're at right now, it's selling off all these players. I wouldn't be surprised if there are big changes in the front office. I wouldn't be surprised if you look at, Buck Showalter's future. They are not going all in for 2024. That much is clear. So could they sign a Nola? Sure. But it still doesn't guarantee them. Like, you put Aaron Nola on their team, it still doesn't make them a World Series contender. Everything fell apart, and it reminds me of the Padres. Remember, I don't know how many years ago this was now, but they spent all this money and they were going to be like, yeah, we're going to be good again. And then they very quickly, things went south and they sold it off for spare parts. This is very similar to that. The Padres, by the way, about a week away from being that in this same situation, but obviously they're not. They are kind of these small buyers as we go through this. They're still looking at another starter, maybe a reliever as we talk right now before the deadline. But the Mets are in a precarious spot. I kind of give them a lot of credit for being able to sell off all these guys. It's a tough sell to say to your fan base, like, hey, we're going to win. It's not LOL Mets anymore. And then a few months later, it is LOL Mets because everybody is leaving. And now you're telling fans to be patient again when they were so jacked up for this season.
Yeah, I think that is the LOL Mets is hilarious to me. My question is to you, and maybe this is too far reaching. Is it almost like Cohen didn't know what he was getting into buying a Major League Baseball team?
1,000%. It's great. I haven't seen too many people bring that up, but I think, this isn't the financial world, right? This isn't something that he had a whole lot of experience with. We know he was a big fan of baseball, in reading a bunch of books about him, and he's been a Mets fan all his life. I don't doubt that he watched a lot of baseball, but talk to people in front offices. It is nothing like running a team is nothing like being a fan. So I think he didn't know how long this process was going to be. He certainly didn't know when he went out there and guaranteed that they were going to win a championship in the next 3 to 5 years, right? Next year is year 3, is it not? So we are getting into precarious territory. I think he realized you can't just buy a title. That doesn't work. As much as fans of all these markets complain when their teams don't spend money or with what Steve Cohen was doing, no one's complaining about what Steve Cohen is doing now. So I do think it's tougher. I do think that they lacked a lot of the pieces in place when it came to the baseball operations department to really have a formidable organization. They're still a year or 2 away from having that minor league system, from having that pipeline. And yeah, it's not an easy fix. I mean, the Wilpons didn't do a whole lot of good. It's going to take a while to undo a lot of the things that they did and to fix a lot of the areas of need. So they built this big shiny house on top of no foundation, and now it's just kind of sinking, unfortunately.
What an analogy for us.
Yeah.
Thank you, Britt. You just moved.
We bought a house.
Year, so
yes,
you know all about
exactly.
houses.
And there's all these problems. The foundation is fine, but it just reminds me of that,
okay,
right?
Good.
Like, it's definitely asking price is like just the starter price, right? It's like, oh, you got to do this.